Good morning, everybody. It is Jillian with JillyJuice.com. And I'll tell you what, after that headache, like that massive 6-day long headache, more mental clarity came to surface. I mean, seriously, more mental clarity came to surface. And totally unanticipated. Sometimes you guys won't even know what you're going to get from the Jilly Juice until it happens. And you start seeing the patterns, the parallels. You look at nature, you look at patterns in nature, and you look at your own family, you look at your own relationships, how you relate to people in the world, why there's a lot of conflict. And then you start then realizing that all the projection out there in the world that used to tear you down doesn't anymore because you realize where it comes from. We live in a colony. We live in a colony of people, colonies upon colonies, where everyone has a queen bee and a worker, and you have to know your place. And it's difficult to understand that when you get lost in all the distractions and the hormones around figuring out your place and trying to find your place in society. And so that's why you see all of like the Tower of Babel, the misunderstandings and mischaracterizations. And then when you finally get some clarity, like in my world, I had to figure out my own body, mind, and spirit. I had to figure out why, my childhood was very interesting, to say the least, as well as all the different conflicts in all of my relationships in the last however many years. And when you are a queen bee and you're trying to find your hive, it's very difficult. Okay. And that's probably why there's a lot of lost people in the world, is because they haven't found their colony. Some people are queen bees, they are leaders. And then what happens is before they actually see their potential in their leadership hood or whatever, the cancer, disease, and chronic illness have destroyed them to where they can't even realize their potential as a leader, and they die in the system. Okay? And so that contributes to a lot of the sadness in the world, where we have a lot of unrealized potential. And we have a lot of queen bees out there that truly are leaders, but they haven't figured out their place. They haven't carved out a space for themselves. And so there are other queen bees that when another queen bee tries to have some kind of relationship, people overstep their boundaries. I mean, I've done it. I've overstepped my boundaries. People have overstepped their boundaries on me. I mean, believe me, I'm not innocent of all of the mistakes out there. But it has you see how things work, and then you don't destroy yourself thinking that you're a horrible person because someone doesn't understand you. And that's probably why you've seen me go through a lot of different people that I work with, because there's no way to equally rule. I mean, I'm married and my husband is king of his castle in the world that I allow him, but he allows me to be the queen in the world that I want to be in. Okay? We don't overstep each other's boundaries. We have division of labor, and I will never compete with him in areas like CB radio, fixing trucks and cars and whatever, the world that he does. That's his world. That he is the king in that world. And I will never try to compete with him in that world, as well as he will never compete with me in the world that I know about health and wellness and so many other things. Okay. But we also know how to come together and have a common foundation. Okay, it is about balance, and it is about respecting boundaries. And that's difficult when you live with somebody because you're always overstepping boundaries, but that takes a lot of years of developing that kind of relationship. And it doesn't happen all at once. You may be physically or chemically attracted to somebody, but then the real true test of a relationship is when you've carved out your space and people stay in their lanes. Okay. And so that's why you've seen me have some issues with people that I've been working with, because some people don't stay in their lanes. And I'm the queen bee. People say, oh, she's so harsh, she's so this, she's so that. That's right. This is my Jilly Juice. Though you guys can take Jilly Juice, in some way, shape, or form and carve out your lane in it. And I will never overstep that. Okay. And so, and people have taken the Jilly Juice and carved out whatever. And I don't mess with how they want to present it. I don't really care. People mischaracterize Jilly Juice, so there are queen bees around the anti-Jilly Juice, but I don't go in there and disrupt too much. I mean, I don't like always the critics, but that is their kingdom. Like Jeff Holiday, I won't go into Jeff Holiday and troll him because he's the king in that world. He's the king anti-Jilly Juicer. Okay, you can be the king in there. And so that's one of the biggest things that I realized. And I realized that from just even my own relationship with parenthood, like motherhood. I mean, motherhood is the ultimate queen bee situation. And no matter what, there's always going to be one queen in every nest. And even if you have two nests. And I've seen roles where the kid is the queen bee and the mother is the subordinate. I've seen those situations. But you can never have two queens really hanging out together because there's always going to be a clash. Unless the two queens are so highly evolved that they stay out of each other's, they stay in their own lanes, and they have a common focus. I found that in Bridget. Bridget, she's someone that she's on Dr. Phil with me. And she stays in her own lane. And, and if she doesn't agree with me, I've never really felt a disagreement from her at all, ever. And she has maybe been a little bit like, okay, maybe you could do this, but it never really triggers me. And so, but she stays in her lane. I stay in my lane. She loves the Jilly Juice. And we do give each other room to express. And she knows kind of like, I get all weird when people check in on me, but I said, okay, you can check in on me occasionally if you want. That's fine. I don't give a lot of people that access to check in on me all the time because you don't need to. But we're working towards a common ground. And that's the thing. And she's been on the Jilly Juice as long as I have, and she's been out there in the public eye. So she went through a lot of the hazing that goes on in the Jilly Juice world because you have to deal with the conflict out there. And you got to know who's queen bee in the Jilly Juice world. But I would never overstep in her world with who she ever works with and tries to dictate. I won't try to dictate whatever she says to her people. And so it's like we stay in our own lanes, and that's a good working relationship. And she doesn't refer to me so much. It's not like she's glomming and glomming and glomming. No, she keeps it she keeps it very balanced. And so that's and that's why, when you don't have so many people just congregating all the time, overstepping boundaries, glomming, just usurping, critical. That's when when you don't have some people doing that and having an opinion and a judgment on everything you do, you have an amazing relationship because you will figure out your mistakes. Okay. And you will come into you will figure out what you need to change in your own time. Okay. And so that's why I'm like breathing a sigh of relief that I've gotten rid of like a really like not say gotten rid of, but I've trimmed my world down to very few people. Because when you have so many people in your world, that's too much room for misunderstandings. And especially when there's people that have imbalances. They're not on the J juice and they don't really understand you. And so there's always going to be some kind of misunderstanding. So it's like, it's better to kind of keep your circle small and have people in their prospective places. And you're not congregating on top of other people on a constant basis. Because I don't need to have that queen bee dominant sub relationship with everybody. Let me tell you, even with best friends, there's always a dominant sub somewhere. There always is. Okay? There always is. And so, and that kind of gives me the perspective on the human body and the Jilly Juice and the salt and the government, and you have people clumping together and coagulating and stagnant and homogenous. And then that is why, our society is so stilted and can't really take on new information because they're so homogenous and consuming each other. No one's really trying to break up their cliques and invite new information and introduce a life trajectory. It's like this constant cannibalizing of their friends and family. And then the outcome is always death. Okay. And so with the whole Jilly Juice, well, why is Jilly Juice different than those that glom and co-op? Because we're creating leaders. We're not always in the group just talking smack and saying we're the best. No, I mean, we're gonna be healthy, but everyone is being a leader in their world. Everyone is taking the Jilly Juice to their world and characterizing how they characterize it, and to where it's a life thing. How they do it, I don't care. I mean, as long as they understand that we can't get too, we can't, I don't know, we can't stray too far from the protocol, which is don't mess with the salt and the recipe. There's very, very specific things, but what you do out there, people only share their testimonies, really, maybe some of their struggles, and even that isn't really too much. So the group is just kind of there for those that need a little bit of support, but mostly you're going to be dealing with the Jilly Juice protocol and process on your own. It's not something where we give constant reassurance. That's not the Jilly Juice world, because what we're all trying to do in the Jilly Juice world is create independent future leaders who are going to break up the clumps of death trajectory belief systems, which I think is kind of weird. I know it's kind of weird because it's like, what? But that's kind of what it is. It's that, that you are your own queen bee. You have your followers who are also queen bees in their world. So we're creating a bunch of queen bees where they are leaders in their own right, who create other leaders in their own right. And so you could say it's like a pyramid thing, right? But that sounds kind of pejorative. But that's what Jilly Juice does. It translates into leadership in some way, because it is a type of leadership. You are taking on an ideology that very few people have entertained or understand. And it's a difficult ideology because you got to deal with pain. So anyway, so I really I got this awakening just from my own relationship with my parents, and the dynamics between, when you raise daughters, it's a dominant sub thing. It's a queen versus subordinate. It really is. And when you raise a queen, it's going to be clash. You're going to always clash. Okay? And so finally I became my own queen, and finally I stopped taking the position of a subordinate in a relationship. And that's when I knew that I'm an equal and I can fly on my own type of thing. So, and so then you start seeing then the patterns in every other relationship. And that's when you can head off potential issues. Because let me tell you, you get stuck in feeling guilty that you should be taking somebody on, or that you should have someone right next to you by your side because of this, and that, or because of your roles, whether it's parent, child, or the fact that this person has been with you for such a long time. Why would you give them up? And I'm not giving up on people, but it's changing the dynamics in a relationship, establishing different boundaries. And when a person is so used to a certain boundary you created a long time ago, and then you change those boundaries, that's difficult for someone that hasn't really evolved or can roll with the punches. And so I've changed relationship dynamics through my evolutionary process, and it hasn't been received well by a lot of different people. Okay, and I understand that. And then I've been skewered for it. People said, I'm so harsh, I'm so this. No, I know what works in a relationship. There's only one queen bee. The Jilly Juice world, which I don't really rule too hard. I mean, I say that there's specific rules in the group. You don't throw up your crap. You only post testimonies, and you characterize a recipe and characterize the Jilly Juice properly, so it's not coming off as if you didn't know that this was going to happen. And you embrace the healing process. That's really the only rules. And there's like 10 rules. 10 rules in my group. Everything else you can do whatever the hell you want. You say whatever the hell you want out there in your own world. I don't go and police people in my group on how they characterize JJ's, but if I see it and it's not in the way that I would in my group, I'm going to say, nah, okay. But my panties don't get in a bunch too much, what other people do as far as the jelly juice. But, but yeah, so I don't know. It's just I head off potential issues, and that's the whole point of the jelly juice, is to be proactive and head off potential issues and understand the patterns in your own relationship, in your body, mind, and spirit, and then how that translates to every other relationship, whether it's working relationship, partnerships, marriage, um, I don't know, sibling relationships. I mean, my sister and I, actually, I have two sisters. One was adopted way later on, down there, like in her 40s. Okay. And so we're all queen bees in our own right. However, one of my other sisters and I, we were raised, predominantly in the household, and we both have now finally since distanced ourselves from the queen bee because we're not taking on the role of subordinate. Now we want to be equal, and if somebody does not want to recognize you as an equal, it's hard to have a relationship when people don't stay in their own lanes. So, and that's fine. But the other sister, she's okay with being a subordinate. But we weren't okay with being a subordinate like that. Because even when you're out of the house, you shouldn't have to play that role of being a subordinate and just take some BS. No, there should be mutual respect and no comments being dropped and no, spiritual attacks on your body, mind, and spirit. That's not a relationship anyone should ever be in, where someone's undermining you, even just a little bit, in a relationship that you want to have. Okay. Especially if that's your only mode of communication is talking. If there is nothing else and your only mode of communication is talking, and they're undermining you when you're talking to them, then that doesn't serve, because you have nothing else to rely on. There's nothing else that you're like, okay, am I willing to overlook this? So that's the kind of the difference. So I've been examining all of my relationships and understanding that, yeah, like in a hive, of a beehive, there's one queen bee. That one queen bee, what is it that because you guys read maybe my post that I talk about my own dynamic with my mother. And I do love my mother, but she's the queen bee, and I will never ever be her equal. And I get that. But it's hard to have a relationship with someone that doesn't recognize you as an equal, that doesn't really appreciate what you have to offer to the world, literally. And I'm not okay with that, because I really work very hard in what I've been doing, and it would be nice to have some kind of acknowledgement. But it's, yeah, and it is what it is, I guess. But I'm trying to find that B thing. Oh yeah, about manipulation. No, that's something different. Oh lordy, I should have figured out where this was. All right, will I find it? I knew this. Oh, okay, I don't know. Well, anyways, what it was saying is that the worker males will produce females as the queen. And if one queen hatches before another queen hatches, then it's a fight to the death. So if there's two queens that hatch different times, the first queen or the dominant queen will go and kill the other queen to be the queen of the hive. If both queens are born together, then it's a fight to the death type of thing. And that's true. That's true in a work environment when you have one queen bee in that environment, and then you have all of the subordinate females kiss ass. And if you're a queen bee working for another queen bee, you better know your place. And that's where conflict in work environments is where you have two queen bees who are spiritually a queen bee, but in a work environment, one cannot play that part. And I've seen that when I've moved into houses where there's a queen bee who rules her roost, and I come in and throw everything in an uproar. And yeah, you can't have two queen bees in a house. And that's no different anywhere else. So, anyways, it's just one of those revelations that I see in my world. And so that could really offer some insight for those that are having trouble with, mothers, fathers, work relationships. And it kind of gives you guys a freedom too, because now you don't have to, you don't feel you have to push your weight around because it's not appropriate. If you are walking into a situation where somebody else has had longevity and, they've earned their place. And even though you may have some great ideas, but maybe they're unappreciated because you're threatening the position of that queen bee, you got to figure out the politics. Who are they connected to? Do you really have the power to knock them off their perch and be that queen bee? And that's the interesting thing. And that's like, king of the mountain. It's so primal. It's very primal. But you have to understand the primalness of it and get away from all the distraction and the self-doubt and the I don't know, where you feel like you're like, wow, nobody likes me. I'm always this person that raises an uproar everywhere I go. Well, you're a queen bee and you have to find your own hive. You really do. And if you don't, then that sucks. But that's the reality of it. So, so there's a lot of lost queen bees that never realize their potential, and that probably contributes to the sadness in the world where people haven't figured out their place because they haven't been able to build up their body, mind, and spirit to be that queen bee of their world. And I fought tooth and nail to be this queen bee in my world, and all I ever wanted was just some kind of acknowledgement from the people that I love the most. And you'll never get it. You'll never get it from another queen bee. Because remember, they're queen in their world. So it takes, well, you'll get it from another queen bee, but not someone that is spiritually I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to say this. You won't get it from someone that is in direct competition, who feels that they're in direct competition. Because there will be queen bees that are highly evolved that will recognize the contributions I've made, and I will recognize the contributions they have made. And we're equally respectful. I find that in Bridget. Interesting, I found that in Bridget. So, but I was never raised by Bridget. Bridget's like my sister, like 10 years older than me. But I've never felt like there was any competition at all. Jilly Juice is an alliance of queen bees. Yeah, it really is. It really is. But I guess, yeah, so why would I not get an acknowledgement from well, because other queen bees there are a queen bee in the world where it directly conflicts with their information, my information, that's where I wouldn't get the acknowledgement. That makes sense. Because I was raised in an allopathic, holistic household. Okay. So when I'm going against the allopathic holistic and I'm a queen bee of that world and they're a queen bee of the allopathic holistic, yeah, there's not going to be any acknowledgement. It's a direct conflict to their way of life. I get it. But it is what it is. But if your only relationship is phone calls and that's it, and you have expectation of just where we I don't know, it's just weird. It's relationships are very, very difficult. They are. And not everyone's going to say the right thing all the time. And some things just, I don't know. Some things you just can't resolve. You just got to move on. So believe me, I've tried to figure out how, I'll tell you what, when people make snide comments underneath their breath and when they're finding ways to undermine you in different ways and all that stuff, and they don't mean it like in kidding, but it's a real intention, it's hard to ignore. It's hard to ignore. Okay. And so at some point, believe me, I've tried to say, okay, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to sidestep it. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to challenge it, which I have. And it's not appreciated. You take it. If a queen bee gives it to you that has, that feels like her world is correct, you don't challenge a queen bee. Okay, in their world. So that's, yeah, one of the biggest things. And that's right with me too. People try to challenge me in my world. I'm not taking it. Well, I get it. I challenged another queen bee in her world and she ain't taking it. We got to go off in different directions. So I think that is the core issue is you never challenge a queen bee in their world. Never, ever. So that's one of the takeaways in the Jilly Juice and my own analyzation of my relationship with my parents, with the different people that worked with me, is you never challenge me. I will figure stuff out if I need to, but no one should ever really challenge me to where I have to defend myself in some way, shape, or form. Okay? Because no matter what, um, you can raise a question, but never really challenge. And there's ways to raise questions. I mean, John Oakes, I'm telling you've challenged me in different ways that isn't like so obtrusive. There are people very adept at saying, okay, here's something, I see a conflict with this. I'm like, okay, I see, all right. And it's not inflammatory. It's not like a direct challenge, like, hey. So some of you are very, very good at that. Others of you, not so good. And I think it has to do with how much you're drinking, as well as just your evolution, your evolutionary process. So, and that's important. Whenever you work with people, you've got to have them as highly evolved as you in some way, shape, or form. And if they're not, it will always be a conflict. Now they say like, well, you're not very highly evolved. Well, what makes you think you're highly evolved more than I? Well, obviously, if we don't see eye to eye, we're not evolving together, so we're devolving together, and that doesn't make a good relationship. Okay, so that's when people can give themselves permission to walk away from things. Okay, then that's the awesomest thing. So, so yeah, I've made lines of communication are always open. My email is there. So, I'm not going to have handwritten letters sent to me. That's not going to happen. Send me an email, pour your heart out in an email, that's fine. Or pick up the phone. But, hey, honey, what?
Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye. Or pick up the phone and have a conversation. And don't cut off the conversation if it doesn't go your direction. You got to listen to your own shortcomings. And that's a hard thing. I mean, believe me, I hear people saying that, oh, you're harsh and you're this and you're that. Well, I'm the queen bee in my world and you're directly challenging me. It's not going to happen. I've done my research. I changed the salt. This is why the diet is the way it is. There is no freaking diet. Whoa, oh my God. All right, you have a problem with it? See you later. Bye. But there's a reason, and I have the videos to explain the reasons. It's not like I'm just arbitrarily making all these rules and expect everyone to abide by them. No, this is why it is. You can do whatever the hell you want. If you want to be on the keto diet and do juice, fine. If you want to be a vegan vegetarian, fine. But I'm going to say, I was listening last night to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. That's my my secret pleasure is watching the Real Housewives. Bravo. And Lisa Rinna was saying that, she was a vegan vegetarian and her shoulder, she had a very major weakness in her shoulder and it froze. Like she couldn't move her shoulder. And come to find out that because she was starving her body of the valuable nutrients that was in the red meat. So she stopped the vegan and vegetarian lifestyle and actually fed her body correctly. And guess what? She doesn't have a frozen shoulder anymore. Okay? So those are those are the reasons why the Jilly Juice and why you just gotta trust. And if you don't trust me at this point, then don't even bother following me. At this point, I don't have time to debate and justify and be undermined by even the closest people next to me. So that's why relationships fail, is because somebody is directly challenging the queen bee. And if you want to be a queen bee in your world, then you go find your own world with your own followers and do it that way. But I'll tell you, you don't have to be a queen bee in the Jilly Juice world. There are so many other things out there in the world that you can be a queen bee in. Jilly Juice is not the only thing. But if you've glommed on to Jilly Juice and you think that's your thing and then you want to try to take it and change it and do this, ain't going to happen. I'm going to destroy you if you try to do that. And that's what you've seen me do, is basically destroy anyone. Not really physically or even spiritually, but I will get rid of anyone that tries to take my work away from me and change it. Okay. And so that's what you've seen the last with all the different changes of people that I've been working with. It's because, yeah, people want to take my work and make it to their agenda, and it's not going to happen. And so, yeah, you can email me, but I'm telling you, even when you email me, if I detect anything that I see is going to be a problem, I mean, you have to be basically when you email me and you want to get back into my world, you can't question me at all. You cannot question me at all whatsoever. It's either do the J juice, report your results, and go be a leader in something that's other than J juice, and that's it. Because this is my world. If you don't do that, then we have no relationship. But I'm not going to play these games of, oh, I'll let you come back and we'll try again and I'll try not to read too much of what you say. No, 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 no. You either do the J juice, report the results, and give a testimony and be a hope for somebody else so they can be like, oh, wow, I can see myself in that person. Like Emily Caines and John and all of you guys that are doing the J juice, you guys have given people a lot of data so they can determine if this is something they want to do. I'm not saying that you're going to get the exact same results, but you'll see your situation that is similar to theirs and be like, okay, I see that they're a real person. Okay, I'll try it or I'll whatever. I mean, there's no try and jelly juice, but at least, give people enough data for them to make a good decision for themselves or a good choice. But yeah, if I detect anything in anybody's email to me when they want to get back into my world or in my group, it better be complete subordination. Complete. And some of you know how to, play that like, I'm not going to be a total support now. I'm going to be, but I mean, but you don't try to challenge me. You get where I'm coming from. And then if there's a way that you want to, like I say one, like, here's the thing. I've said something where I know John's like, hey, about this, or I could even go to an extreme and, like saying something about, what was it about Jilly or the salt doesn't cause high blood pressure, hormones do. And then he said, and also too, uh, the hormonal imbalances, but Jilly juice does not cause hormonal imbalances. So he was actually able to add on instead of it's not. He wasn't challenging me, but he was able to add on to make sure that people don't make that assumption. And that's what I find is helpful. Is someone like John who is evolved enough to see how someone else could take that statement. Well, okay, if Jilly juice doesn't cause um, hypertension or high blood pressure, but hormonal imbalances do, then make sure you profess that jelly juice does not cause hormonal imbalances as well. That's what I find was very, very helpful from John. And that wasn't a challenge, but it was an add-on to make sure that we do not allow anyone to misunderstand. And so I'm not asking for people to just be silent, shut up. But if you have something really valuable to contribute, not a judgment, not a critique or an unsolicited, debate, but saying, adding on to the information so we don't have anyone misunderstand or mischaracterize what I'm saying, that is far more valuable than someone trying to help me um, improve myself. Okay. And so that's why I keep the people around me that I do, because they know how to contribute in a tactful way, in a very tactful, strategic way where it still adds to the overall foundation. Because you've seen me have conflict with people because you're seeing two queen bees trying to fight for the freaking limelight. Okay? And men can be queen bees too, just so you know. So I want to make sure you understand how all of that translates. It translates not only in the work world, but also in your relationships, father, daughter, mother, daughter, sister, sister, anyone that you move in with, roommate situations, when you get a bunch of girls together, all a bunch of queen bees, holy crap, that's where, I'm listening to these murder shows called True Crime Daily, which is my favorite YouTube channel. I don't know why, because like 40 minutes, 15 minutes of like a whole dissertation of murder stuff. And yeah, when you have a bunch of people hanging out together with like, groups of people from different, just a lot of people hanging out together all the time, when you have these large cliques and inevitably someone is going to step on somebody's toes. Well, you look in groups. You look at all the different groups and all of the politics and the drama, and there's the queen bee, which are the admins, and you have all your different subordinates, which are the members, and then you have a queen bee that comes in there, tries to raise a ruckus, and then people inevitably do step on someone's toes. Somebody dates somebody else's boyfriend, and then what happens is someone talks smack over here. It's like you see in the Real Housewives, the drama where they talk smack here, they talk smack there, and then you trigger someone to then commit a crime because you messed with their boyfriend. Okay. You really messed with something that was so important to them. And so that's why I keep my circle small, because I don't need the drama of somebody else's imbalances or the misunderstandings or the mischaracterizations or someone trying to impose their will onto me. Okay. And I'm very, very sensitive to somebody making suggestions to me, whether it's cut my hair or maybe you shouldn't do this. And so I keep my circle small, and those that are around, even on a limited basis, we have a very common goal, whether it's Jilly Juice or my husband is the common denominator. Okay. And then we carefully figure out our boundaries. So it's definitely something to, when Jilly Juice, you start analyzing everything and you start seeing the patterns in nature. So that's, another pattern in nature is the queen bee scenario and king bee scenario, because men can be queen bees too. Or men can be subordinates that will cater to a queen bee. And that's why you see dynamics in a relationship, because you can't have two major queen bees in a relationship. There's going to be always one a bit more dominant than the other. So just go and analyze all your relationships. Figure out who is the dominant, who's the subordinate, and then what you get out of it, and then all of your complaints about it. And then it gives people permission to walk away when something doesn't serve them. And it has you just then give yourself permission to be who you are. And that's one of the biggest revelations about Jilly Juice. And it took the major 6-day headache to really look at my own family relationship, because I get it now. And so I'm not really upset. I'm not upset. Believe me, the other party that that was probably going like, damn, you're such a queen bee, and I'm directly challenging her way of life, is probably happy that I'm allowing it to be what it is, because it's difficult when someone's always challenging your way of life. It really is. It sucks. But I can justify, say, oh, I want you to live, but that's not for me to decide. But we don't really have any other, when you can't talk about your most, when your most important thing, when the thing that you love the most, which is like Jilly Juice, directly conflicts with somebody else's way of life, and that you can't even talk about it with that person because there's nothing else really to talk about, really, because you haven't really had that, you don't have anything else except for that. I mean, yeah, you can talk about the weather, but if politics and that's the thing, is when you can't even talk about certain things, when there's only safe subject matters like the weather or the house, what do you do with the house, or husbands or something, or certain things that we both know, when you have to be very careful in what you talk about with somebody, it's too much. It makes it when you have to try so hard in a relationship, when you don't have other things that you have in common, that's when you don't, that's when you're like, okay, what's the point? See, and that's what we have to weigh out, is how many things in common do you have with a person that one subject matter is not going to matter if you don't talk about it. Okay. And that's what I came to terms with, is that there wasn't really anything else that we had except for what I was doing in my life that was important to me. So I don't know. It's definitely an interesting dynamic, but I think that all of you deserve to see what's going on in my world, because it's part of the Jilly Juice world. Jilly Juice brings up these things to where you're forced to analyze it, and you're forced to deal with it and make very sound choices and decisions based upon your awakenings, because why keep recycling in the same stuff? If I had this same conversation right now that I'm going through this last couple of days, a year from now, what the hell did I learn? Unless something changed another person, I allowed them back in my life. But then if something happens again, the same thing happens again, then I have no room to say anything else because I allowed it. I gave that, knowing fully well. Okay, but now because once you get to the root of why you cycle into these looping types of relationships and you evolved from that, then it should never be something you ever revisit again. And that's the point of J Juice, is you resolve your body, mind, and spirit issues to where you never have to revisit them again, ever. But what happens is that people get involved with the cures and the pills and the powders and the supplements and the detoxes and the alcohol, drugs, and sex and rock and roll, right? And then they get into the same type of relationships in different circumstances, and they have the same complaints. They don't evolve, and they are aging and degrading, so they haven't given their body enough strength to be able to get themselves out of that loop and that cycle. And then that's where all the problems in the world stem from, is that people never truly resolve the root cause of why they have the issues they have. And some of them are so embedded, so deep, that you don't even know what they are until you resolve other issues in your body, like your brain, like your heart and your vital organs. Okay. And if you don't get your vital organs resolved, then you won't really truly have the capacity to really walk away from damaging relationships or damaging employers or damaging anything, damaging industries. Our industries out there are very damaging. Boiler rooms, where you're having to make 50 million phone calls and force somebody into a life insurance policy. And you're working, 14 hours a day, cold calling people. At some point, it's going to tax the hell out of people that don't believe in selling, a very poor person a very expensive life insurance policy. Okay? So that's the thing, is you've got to get your body completely like reversed in all the areas, so that way you can have these awakenings. Hey, Mr. Shepherd, Mrs. Shepherd, good morning, good afternoon. Okay, so that's the power of the Julie Juice, is that you finally get off that wheel of destruction in families, in professions, in all types of relationships. And you set your boundaries and you stand by them. And that's, yeah. So I wanted to make sure you guys understood the background of me, because it's easy to say. It's easy to say that, oh, we can't have a queen bee, can't have two queen bees here and there. And yeah, you can go and rattle off stuff you see in nature. Oh yeah, my situation is just like in the queen bee colony. You can't challenge me. You've got to be able to substantiate how you came to that conclusion, not just by reading, something you found like in yeah, you can make that connection, but there is a process to get to that connection. So I wanted you to see that process. It took me to figure out my relationship with my mother, which has been very difficult for a very long time, but I've kind of ignored the red flags because I wanted to be in her life in some way, in some limited capacity, based on her terms. But it's not, doesn't serve me anymore in that way. So I have to now reestablish what I want from a relationship, and that's not it. I'm not going to be somebody's subordinate. So you got to see how I've come to these conclusions as far as just relationships in general, and queen bees and subordinates, and then you're looping in bad relationships, bad choices because of your body in constant turmoil. And it does all stem from your body in constant turmoil. And then you loop in the anti-government stuff, you loop in the anti-everything stuff, and you don't see that there is a place for it all. Whether it has a place in your life is different. But when you have two people, right? Was it two's a company, three's a crowd, and then anything more than that is cancer? Yeah. When you have large cliques, and all they do is hang out together, reproduce together, drink together, go to ball games together, and they all die together. They all have babies together, and they all die together. That's cancer. When you break up these major groups, and you get them to think for themselves and you give them a life-giving protocol like Jilly Juice, they start creating and converting the death trajectory of the clumping and the activism and all that anti-hate stuff to then evolving and being a leader and evolving humanity, leaping it forward. What is it? Advancing humanity to the next evolutionary leap, I guess. Who knows? I don't even know what it's going to look like because we're still looping. A lot of us are still looping. And so that's why I made that analogy about Jilly Juice breaks up the clumps. It melts tumors off people's bodies. It breaks up the antibodies so you release the excess so they don't damage you. It decalcifies your pineal gland so you're able to now have free running hormones and suppress the wrong ones that don't need to come to surface if you're on a life trajectory, and express the right ones. And that's why, like, when men lose so much of their prostaglandin through semen type stuff, they're losing their life. They have to heal, and conserving their semen, that's how they heal. But you'd never see a guy that's like all into chasing tail admit that. But the prostaglandins are healing. So the Jilly Juice releases a prostaglandin when necessary. And then you hold on to them because, of course, you hold on to them because you may need them in the future. You never know. You have to upgrade to a new environment. You need those prostaglandins to come to surface to heal you as you're upgrading. Or you get into an accident out of your control and those prostaglandins are there to heal you. But if guys are constantly releasing their prostaglandin all the time, they're not going to have enough to heal their body. It all makes sense. I mean, some of the Buddhist philosophy of seminal conservation, it makes sense. So that's why the Jilly Juice says, okay, you could reverse a lot of different reproductive identification type of categories, not just one reproductive identification, but the other ones. I'm not going to name them because I don't want it to come off too political and someone take offense. But if we can stop reproducing at the macro level and reproduce at the micro level, and we stay living indefinitely where we don't have to keep reproducing children constantly, you would see a far different society than what you see today. So, motherhood is very precarious, and destruction and reproduction is the name of the game of motherhood. And that is the ultimate prototype of queen bee dominant sub scenarios. And that's why you see some families that are great because the mother allows their child to be the queen bee. And so there's no issue, right? If the child can be the queen bee, there's no problem. But if the mother wants to be the queen bee and the child doesn't, you're not going to challenge that queen bee. You're not going to challenge that queen bee. You can't have two queen bees. So, but yeah, you can have a child that's subordinate to the mom. Yes, you have that. But when you raise a queen bee and you're a queen bee yourself, you're going to have a whole world of problems. And some of you have kids that are just like you. You're a queen bee, they're a queen bee, and it's always an argument. Always. Okay? So these are the indicators to recognize how to head off issues. To realize if you have a queen bee in your household and you're a queen bee, you know there's going to be issues unless you just let them do what they got to do, guide them carefully, make sure they know the law, and make sure they're held accountable for the decisions that they make. And you set your boundaries. When you have a queen bee and you're a queen bee, you better set your boundaries, or a king bee, because there are boys too that are queen bees as well. But you set your boundaries because I'm telling you, it's very important for a subordinate to set their boundaries. They don't have to be a queen bee, but they have to know their boundaries. And what happens is some of these subs don't know their own boundaries, and they allow the queen bee to run roughshod all over them. And I see that in some parent-child relationships where it's the kid that is the ruler of the roost. Okay, fine, until it becomes such a problem where now the kid destroys the household. So there's got to be a balance. But that's a major analysis on my end. So, yeah, so there's nothing wrong with my mother. There's nothing wrong with me. We're just both major queen bees, and we both have a queen bee in our own perspective areas, and we can't challenge each other in any way, shape, or form. Nope. And so when all you have is a talking relationship, And you get tired of talking about the weather. What else is there? Can't talk about my work, can't talk about my discoveries because it would directly challenge and conflict with her. That there's no relationship. None. So I get it. So that's what the realizations I have. Okay. So I just wanted you guys to know that, and understand that sometimes you have to let things go. Sometimes you do. And it's a hard decision to make, to let things go, to let people go, because you know that there's no way that you're going to be able to really work constructively together. So, all right, you guys have an amazing day, but that was a real awakening. And I remember having the same issue I had a while ago. Oh, Miss Shepherd. Okay, yeah. I had the same situation about maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and I was crying the whole time. Going, oh my God, my mama left me. No, no, she had to save herself. I had to save myself. Da da da. Queen bees, king bees. Okay, now I understand it. Now we'll be able to find a happy medium. Probably not, because she's going to have a declaration that I'm not going to want to abide by because she's not a ruler in my world. And that's probably why I think that letter came through the mail instead of through an email, because there's probably screenshots of what I said on Facebook that she probably didn't like. And so she's probably like, you take that down. I can only imagine. I mean, I'm speculating, yes. But that's the only reason why I could think that there would be an actual physical letter in the mail, not a phone call or an email. So, and so JK Shepherd says, you are so right. My son thinks he's running my house. Yeah. I've seen mother-son relationships where the son just dictates everything and the mother acquiesces because that's her son. And she'd rather just spoil her son, not hold any boundaries. And so then he will always need his mama until she passes away. And then maybe she might leave him some money, but then once that money's gone, and there'll be somebody else that'll take that place. So it's, the guys that rely on their mama so much will find a wife or somebody else that will take on that role of savior. And and that's it is what it is. And I get it. So it's interesting. But yeah. The dynamics of people in relationships is such a trip. It's such a trip. All right, so you guys I did, but not now. Okay, very good. Okay. But you guys have an amazing, amazing day. And, and I'm glad I just kind of clarified all that and got it all out. I'm probably not going to go back and forth with you, Miss Shepherd, but you don't really have to PM me. I don't do too much of the back and forth. But if you want to say what you got to say, that's fine. I'm probably not going to go back and forth and give you any advice because I don't really give advice. But do the J juice. And if you want to PM me a testimony, that's great. If you just want to get that off your chest with no requirement that I respond in any way, shape, or form, except for, hey, that's great. I'm glad you've seen the light or whatever. Perfect. Okay. Only because I just can't get too involved with people's dynamics. It's something that you're going to have to deal with. But if it's something you just want to, get off your chest and you want to just say your portion of it, whatever it is, that's fine. Okay. You can do that, but just don't expect me to go back and forth and answer any questions. All right. Or give you any advice on your situation, because I'm not a qualified trained therapist and I'm not a medical doctor or anyone's health coach. Okay. So other than that, you guys have a good day. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.